When I was little, I learned that please was the magic word. Then I got a little older and I learned that abracadabra was the magic word. Then I learned that they're never interchangeable under any circumstances. For you, sir, I will have the grilled cheese with tomato abracadabra. Okay, here's your grilled cheese. Enjoy. Will you abracadabra just look at me when I'm talking to you? Bitch, abracadabra.
You are listening to Two Magicians, One Mic.
Jump in here. Welcome. I'm going to sound more excited this time because I was listening to myself last episode and I'm like, God, I sound so depressed.
I don't want to sound that depressed anymore.
It's just me. I'm just a very low-key person. My wife is always surprised. Like, she knows when I'm genuinely happy is when, like, we're going out to have a nice meal because I start to get genuinely excited.
Well, that's good. She knows you then.
That's why we're married. Welcome to Two Magicians, One Mic. My name is Nick Paul.
And I'm Dennis Fleetwood.
Thank you so much for listening. Right up top, I forgot to do it last week, and I feel terrible. Another great performer-esque podcast.
The Dead Pod? What's going on?
It's called the Professional Performer Cast. I did an episode in November, I think it came out. It was great, and they've had everybody from Willman to John Armstrong, very similar, somewhat similar in style to ours, but they really tackle the business end. So if you're more so interested in the business aspect of magic or performing in general or being a solo performer, definitely check it out on iTunes. They are great. Chris is a good guy. Also, if you wanted to donate to the podcast, it costs like $30 to $40 a month to keep this thing going between bandwidth and paying for internet usage and the government and all those fun things.
The fake moon landings.
The fake moon landings. You're welcome to donate to twomagiciansonemic@gmail.com via PayPal, or if you go to the website, twomagiciansonemike.com, there's a link right there. Special thanks to Telnet Worldwide. They gave us a nice sizable donation last week to keep the podcast going. So thank you so much, Telnet Worldwide.
Thank you.
Dennis, how are you?
Fantastic. How are you?
Good. It sounds like you're doing some laundry or something.
No, I'm actually I'm doing my prep work for my lunch. So besides being a magician, I like to cook, and then I have OCD, so I have to do it the right way, like the chefs do on TV, and do all my prep work and cut the onions before I even start doing anything.
There's nothing more depressing to me that when I make food at home and it tastes terrible, I get so mad because, you're trying to save money. It's a great way to save money. It's a great way to do something on your own. And then the food is awful. And then I just get angry and I'll go buy a hamburger or something.
You just have to watch a bunch of Gordon Ramsay videos.
Then you just throw stuff at the wall.
What the fuck am I doing?
This is awful. That wasn't Gordon Ramsay. That was some weird Cockney guy.
Did you ever see that meme of Gordon Ramsay where he's like leaning over a counter and he's like screaming, and like somebody put like the caption was like, "My dick is stuck in a drawer." And it was, yeah.
He would get angry at somebody else for that happening.
Right.
He's that kind of character.
Yeah, no, but actually, on that note, he has some really, really good videos online that like teach you how to make really awesome food and like really easy. Like he teaches you how to make a steak in like 1 minute, and like how to make the perfect steak, and it works. Everything he says.
I feel like half the time he seems like the most down to earth person when he's not yelling.
Well, I mean, you got to remember it's TV. They're selling that,
Yeah, it's reality television. So.
Yeah, so I'm sure he's not like walking around like, "Can I get a bag of onions?" like at the store, Like I'm sure he's not doing that.
Yeah, I'm sure he would one day though if he's like really hungry and pissed off that he made noodles wrong.
I doubt he's gonna go hungry anytime soon.
I wanted to talk about this last week. By the way, our interview this week is Rob Zabrecky. It's a fascinating interview. He's one of my favorite performer, actor, magician dudes. So it was a great great interview. We interviewed in the back of his backyard with his 3 dogs, and it was pretty cool.
Awesome.
I wanted to talk about Star Wars. Did you see Star Wars?
I did, yeah.
What were your thoughts? Because I was a big fan. I'm a big Star Wars nerd, so I was biased from the beginning.
Right.
But I felt it was a great retro movie, as George Lucas called it, and kind of alluded to this excitement and, for lack of a better term, magic that you don't really get to experience at the movies anymore. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that I come from a completely different background, whereas like wasn't really raised on Star Wars. It wasn't like a big part of like my family life like it is for some people. I've seen the movies, and I enjoy a lot of them for many different reasons. I'm not like crazed about it, like, you know, the Star Wars culture, I like to call it, you know, that kind of thing. But I had a great time at that movie. I thought it was really well put together. I think like story wise and like really like trying to push the boundaries. I think they played it safe at that part. Casting wise, they took a lot of risks, you know, and what a lot of people maybe were going to give it some flack, you know, having a female lead and all this kind of stuff, and the black lead and all these things that are just in the media right now and that are just all over the place. You know, you're constantly hearing about it because it's still an issue. But the film itself, fantastic. Like,
yeah, I felt
I liked it. It didn't like. I wasn't guessing what was going to happen at the end. Like, I knew it was going to happen at the end. You know, that's what I meant. Like, not really like taking any big risks. So
you mean Darth Vader comes back? That's what you don't want to tell everybody. That's secret that you shouldn't tell. Just kidding. That doesn't.
Yeah. Happen. No, Darth Vader doesn't come back. But as far as like just the way that the story was going to go, you know, it wasn't like if you're watching, for instance, The Secret Window with Johnny Depp. You know, you don't know how the movie's going to end. On this one, you go, oh, okay, yep, we get it, and there's this and that, okay, and then I bet they're going to end on that scene. And I was right, you know, I was like, oh, that's how they're going to end it. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, I was more so just looking at it from
I think it was a film for the fans, you know what I mean? Like, that's what it was for. I don't think, I was listening to an interview or watching an interview with George Lucas, and I didn't get to finish it. But I don't think he was very happy with it. No,
if you get a chance, watch that full interview he did with, what's his face from PBS. The full 50 minutes is great.
Yeah, with Charlie Rose.
Charlie Rose, thank you. I don't know if I think of his name. But yeah, it's funny because he goes in and out of being bitter about it. You know, he's like, it's his creation, and you can tell he loves it, but at the same time, he was just done in. Clearly, the movie he wanted to make, nobody wanted to see because he made 3 of them 10 years ago and they were awful. But the whole reason I thought about it, it just kind of related to like a good show, good theater magic experience because it was exciting and it kind of all the characters had pretty solid intentions and it was just kind of
like I said, you know, they played it safe.
Yeah. They played it safe, but they knew what they had to do to get the audience on board.
They also played to the commercialness of it. You know, we can sell a lot of products with this now, even more than we already do.
Well, the first Star Wars started that. You know, everybody thought Lucas was crazy when he wanted to hold on to the rights for toys and merchandise and stuff.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, sure, do whatever you want. And then he became a bajillionaire because of that.
Yep.
But I mean, I was just kind of looking at it from a magic perspective in terms of how the story was keeping the audience on board, and it just kept moving. You know, I feel like a good magic show should just keep moving, and not get stuck on something.
Yeah, there was definitely a sense of like story that you could follow, real simple, just like, and they just kept going. That's one thing that I talk a lot about. With some people is the idea that the way they make movies like hasn't really changed. Like if you look at like how they set up a shot or what the shot itself actually is or the composition of the shot, it hasn't really changed very much. That whole thing, the acting has changed, and the technology has changed, but if you go back and watch like an older movie, it's all the same shots with the dolly and all that stuff. Like,
yeah, they were going back with a lot of special effects. I was just watching a featurette, and they were having to like change the way the camera moved because they wanted to make it realistic, like that whole kind of car chase sequence with the Millennium Falcon in the desert. Right. And they're like, oh, we got to make this feel as if a helicopter was actually, shooting this. And, and even the special effects guys, they'll always come down to, it's like, it doesn't matter how great the technology is. If the performer can't perform in a real way, or if it doesn't come across, it doesn't matter. And
so many things have to line up for it to work.
Yeah, and I felt that they really kept that in mind, which was certainly forgotten in the first three. They were just so excited to shoot everything on a blue screen that they forgot that it's not going to translate to the audience. And, we always talk about story on this, and I think story is the most important, and character is the most important part of a performance or, movie or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. Very much. I mean, there's certain times where you watch a movie like that and you realize, wow, that's a green screen. I saw a really cool thing the other day, and I can't remember what it was. It was a series of pictures and a series of videos where they showed what the scene actually looked like when they were filming it versus what it looked like on the film. And some of them you would never think it was green screened. It was like a guy running into a crowded plaza, like in the middle of France or something. And then he looked around, and it was him and another person, and there was all these other people around. It's like they lost somebody in the crowd. But then they showed it in the studio, and it was a complete green screen. Like everything was green screened. And it just looked so good, and the acting was believable, and the fans were in the right spot, and everything lines up, and you get this perfect illusion of just like, whoa, I had no idea how much of what we think in the movie, oh, well, they shot that on location. No, they didn't. They took pictures of the location and then built it in a studio to have complete control over the environment. That's to what lengths do you go to get, the perfect image? And I think that's what these Hollywood films are trying to do, always trying to create the perfect image to create the story in the most, clear way. If you're on a set and cars are driving by and you had to rent this location, you got to block off the streets. Yeah, granted, that's going to cost a lot less than, having an entire studio, where they build this place. But in the real world, you can't control the lighting. You can't control people yelling as they walk by or whatever. But in that studio, in that sound stage, you can. And what a concept, to go to the lengths. I don't know very many places in my show where I take the lengths of, complete perfection. There's always some kind of an outside element that can influence what I'm doing. Whether unless I'm just doing it for the camera. That's the only time I can have complete control for complete perfection. But
yeah.
Any other time we're always being engaged in some kind of way, and so there's that margin for error.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, just the hybrid of new technology and old technology, and I love it because I'm pretty good at spotting any type of CGI, and I love it when I can go back and watch something and be totally fooled when it's half the set's real and half the set is green screen, and then they did that a lot in this movie. So you're not focused on, oh, that's a fake background. You're focused on what's happening.
Story.
Yeah, the story, and everything else is just addition. It's like the audience shouldn't be concerned about how you're palming that card or how you're doing a switch or whatever.
Right.
They should be concerned about just what's happening in that moment.
Definitely. What did you think about the movie? You really liked it?
Yeah, I was a big fan, of course. And I've talked this to death with everybody, but I just figured I'd bring it up because I thought it was a nice kind of just homage to good performance and good storytelling. And I think universally, a lot of people liked it. Everybody, there's haters everywhere because of the internet. But I think overall, they made a movie for the fans, and they made a movie that was exciting for people. You know, it gave everybody a reason to go to the movies, in my opinion. You know, something like that.
Yeah,
or something like
it was
Mad
almost
Max.
like a reboot,
you got to see it.
you know?
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
And you know, I think my favorite article about it was the NPR article where they're like, "There's nothing original about this movie, but I still really enjoyed it." You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And that's kind of what it came down to.
And I think I knew that the film was going to be in good hands with J.J. Abrams. I mean, a lot of people dislike him and dislike his style or whatever, but I think he did a phenomenal job, even with like the Star Trek movie. And when he was asked to do that, I'm like, great. I was under the impression actually that he was doing all three, but he's not. I guess he's just like producing the next one, then he's got nothing to do with the one after that at this point.
Yeah. So he's just executive producing and he's handing it off to the next people for sure. Yeah. But wrapping this up, we're going to jump over to our interview with Rob Zabrecky. Thanks so much for chatting with us, Dennis Friebe.
Yeah, totally.
And we'll talk to you next week.
All right, till next time.
Okay, bye-bye.
And just relax. I'm going to kick my feet up here and think about things.
This is the most comfortable interview I think I've ever done, which is quite amazing to me.
I do my best to make my interviews to make my interviews as comfortable and fun as possible.
Have you done this like on the Tonight Show or something?
They come here. Yeah, I don't leave the house. Why would I?
There's no need to. This is a lovely place.
Southern California. I have no shoes on.
This is Nick Paul and Rob Zabrecky. We are interviewing on Two Magicians, One Mic. How are you, Rob?
I'm feeling good. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Thanks for doing this free podcast, as I tell everybody. So there's no compensation other than the joy you get to experience in this half-hour, 45-minute conversation.
All right. Let's have some joy then.
So, if you could give me a brief bio about yourself, like minute or two long,
yeah,
you can condense it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I got into magic way later than most magicians. Fell into it in my 20s completely on accident. Learned a trick, fell in love with magic, went to the Magic Castle, and kind of fell in love with the subculture of magic and the history of it, and became obsessed with putting together a parlor act. You know, that was really it for me. Mm-hmm. I saw a few guys performing in the parlor, and I just thought, I want to do that. And I had a career as a musician before, so I was sort of wanted to I was ready for, reinventing myself. And magic came at the perfect time.
What type of music did you play?
Rock, basically. Yeah. Rock.
Were you a guitarist or a drummer? Or
bass player, singer. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long did you do that for?
10 years.
Wow.
That was the dream, the childhood dream, and was able to sort of sustain myself from doing that for 10 years, and it ran its course as things do,
mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I got to a point where I just wanted to do something different, and magic just presented itself at the perfect time.
Sure. Were you touring around, or?
Yeah, I was in Baltimore.
Okay.
At the time when I learned my first trick, so it was 3,000 miles away, and it was the last thing I expected that was going to be catch my interest. That's for sure. I didn't like magic. I didn't have any interest in magic at all. In fact, I had verse sort of thoughts about it and reactions to it. When I was a little kid, I was brought on stage by Ronald McDonald at my school assembly, and he poured evaporated milk in my head, and or should I say, he poured milk in my head and it evaporated, and I got humiliated and embarrassed.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it really, magic just had a, it didn't present itself well for me. And then, there's Fantasy Island,
mm-hmm.
like there was the 70s kind of magicians you would see, in purple jumpsuits, sawing girls in half for no apparent reason. And it just didn't really grab me anyway.
Yeah. So absurd. It's so, I always bring up Arrested Development on the show, but it's so Joe Bluth so many times that you're watching this and you're wondering, why am I watching this? What's the necessity for this?
Yeah,
right. It's just purely showing off a lot of times, it feels like.
Yeah, there's that. A lot of magicians, that's an accurate representation of a lot of, magic as we see it in public, as we see it sort of presented on television. Walking down the boardwalk, there's the guy in the straitjacket telling you lines you've heard a million times, and it's just there's nothing great about it. And you go, "This is an art form?" I don't think so. People write it off as this sort of hokey, gimmicky, secondary variety art, and I understand why they would. I can see why people kind of feel that way.
And for you, what are the similarities between being a musician and being a magician?
Well, being a performer, being on stage, having that desire to want to get in front of people and show something, some point of view that you have, something that's deep inside of you that you've got to sort of get out, whether it's, hey, look at me, I'm special.
Yeah.
There's that. I think there's that element with every performer, whether they want to sort of admit it or not. People want to perform because they're satisfying a part of their ego that that needs to get
It's just that vindication from strangers is such a strange thing.
Yeah,
that I'm guilty of it. I know a lot of guys are, and I'm curious as to where that comes from.
I don't know. I hate it. I hate that I have that thing inside of me that says, "Look, I have to get out there and have that burning desire to want to perform, to want to step in that spotlight again and again and again, and do it better each time." It's like, well, okay, so you get kind of good at something, and then you go, "All right, I want to make this as satisfying as possible for myself and for my audiences." And that's I don't know. God knows where it comes from.
Do you have a background in theater?
Nope, I don't.
Because your character is so theatrical to me and so actor based. That's what it feels like when I see it.
Yeah, thanks.
And which is thrilling to me. Anytime I've seen you perform, it's certainly not blowing smoke off your butt, but it always is. It's so unique and refreshing. Where did that style, or was that intentional, or was that something you kind of fell into?
It was intentional. I mean, I think when I was getting interested in magic, I realized pretty early on that it was magic like music, like acting, I guess, sculpture, dance. It's a form of self-expression, a way of expressing a point of view. And I had that in music, and then I thought, well, I can do this in magic too. I can present something. And at first I didn't know what that thing was, but as time went on, I was finding myself attracted to certain kinds of effects and just growing up, essentially. I would kind of, this is a second career, so I've kind of come to figure things out on my own terms, and I realized that I could have a voice in this art form. Sure. So that's when I really embraced acting, and started enrolling in acting classes and theater, and eventually becoming a little bit engaging in TV and film stuff, and kind of becoming interested in those mediums too.
Do you do a lot of acting on the side as well, or
more
full time?
More now than ever. As sort of as magic kind of captured my attention 10 years ago, or I don't know, almost 15, 18 years ago. Acting's done that about 10 years ago for me, so I've become interested in doing that. And I think it's the same thing. If you're really embracing the theatricality of film or television acting as an art form, there's a lot of ways to express yourself that can be really interesting. It's different because you've got a script that you're dealing with. Someone else has written the words. There's other actors that you have no control over who the other actors are for the most part, unless you're casting it yourself or producing your own material. And you have no idea. You don't have any control over, say, the music that goes into it, the way that the fonts of the credits go. But in magic, you get to write, you get to produce, you get to direct, and you get to act. You really have complete control, which is great, and also can be just hugely challenging because there's a lot of problems to solve.
It's frustrating being a solo performer sometimes because, if it goes well, you get to take all the credit. And if it goes poorly, you also get to take all the credit. Which is a strange boat to be in.
Yeah, you just want to run. You just want to run and quit. Sometimes when things don't go well in magic, when that effect goes wrong or you don't get the response you thought you were going to get, it can be a drag. But that's, part of the fun and challenge, I guess, that goes along with it. Is, it's... I think in TV and film you can you do a bunch of takes, and then with all the movie magic, things can kind of shape up to a decent Those are birds, by the way. In the back here.
We are
In
outside.
case you're wondering.
This is the most, relaxing interview I've ever done.
We're in a sanctuary.
This is a safe space.
It is. It's called the Center for Living. Actually, that's what it says. Right? That's what the sign says. The Center for Living. But anyhow, you get to have all this control in magic, and you really can explore so much. It's endless of how deep you can go with presenting an act.
Sure. We've discussed music. What about other influences outside of magic that have kind of led you to where you are now?
Man, that just changes from moment to moment, really. Throwing the ball for my dog can be a great source of inspiration. I love everything. I've always been I've had certain obsessions for decades, pop culture stuff, art, movies, music, a couple making out in the subway in New York. Anything can really just go, I gotta do something. I want to see if I can reinterpret that in an act somehow, whatever that means. And so I'm always kind of on the search, for finding things to kind of write about, things that scare me, things that I hate, things that I love, and I've always got a notebook full of ideas because of that.
Mm-hmm. What about what particular locations do you perform in a lot? Is it mainly theaters, or does your character work for corporate events and things like that?
Occasionally. I mean, people that hire me for corporate events generally know that I'm not your typical corporate style performer, so they'll hire me for this character that I do. But I would say, I work a lot at the Magic Castle, theaters around the world. I've done magic conventions all over the world. I just did FISM over the summer. Okay. That was great. So I have this one-person show that runs about an hour, and it kind of has a bit of a through line through it, and that's really the big puzzle that I'm always dragging around with me, because all the components can change, as we were talking earlier about. You changing an act. You were saying working for Disney, how you can tweak certain things and get different chances to make it right or change it up, and get that sort of perfect set. And that's what the one person show for me is trying to find that hour of trying to capture all the qualities that a good movie has, or a good song has, or a good painting, or something like that. Peaks, valleys, all that stuff.
Do you have any suggestions on figuring out your through line? Because that's what I'm trying to do now. When I did my Fringe show last year, I showed it to a few different people, and one of the things John Armstrong, one of the good notes he gave me a lot of good notes, but one of the best notes he gave me is, you have a lot of vignettes right now, and you don't have a through line, and that's what I'm kind of struggling with right now.
Well,
because I think any magic show should have a beginning, middle, and ending if you're watching a full 45 to 60 minute show.
I agree, but if you look at the best magic shows, let's take Penn and Teller and Ricky Jay. I think those are pretty agreeable. Yeah,
universally.
Yeah, it's just wonderful sort of hours. Just there's not so much a through line where each piece you can say, oh, this is about this and this relates to this because of that, and then Shadows is like this, and then the bullet catch is. You can't really do that. I don't think. But what you can do, and the same with Ricky, where his routines don't necessarily link like puzzle pieces in a plot sense, where you've got these little vignettes or little stories, but you get one guy and one guy's point of view, so he's got a strong character.
I see.
So whether he's playing something sad or happy or angry or fearful or love, it's all done through the eyes of that guy. And same with Penn and Teller. Yeah. It's whatever they do, it's going to be done through the P&T lens, and therefore it's going to have that brand to it. Yeah. So I think that, rather than try to go, like Mr. Electric, like Marvin Roy or something, when I have an act where it's all light bulbs and lights and this and that, I don't think that's necessarily a solution for a lot of, creating an act so much, but having a character that's got a point of view where after a few moments you get a sense of the tempo, like the metronomes click into a certain kind of rhythm, and whether, and you get into that, you lock into a sort of a groove with that. I think you do that with Penn and Teller, and that can it can change throughout the show, but there's a vibe, and some people, and that's a hard thing to sort of I mean, I don't know. I have what I've got. I don't know how it comes about from just always tweaking the show and playing around things and trying to find new ways to tell my life story. You know? And I think that works for me, but for other people, I don't. That's a hard thing to sort of give advice for because I think everybody's different.
Yeah. Yeah, it's your own character, is how you're approaching it.
But what I can say is that the P&T shows works so well, as does Ricky's, as does some of the better one-person shows, because they've been worked on, they've been developed, they've been thought through. Everything's sort of there's a nice, you've got like years of sort of development that have gone into these shows, and that's what makes them good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. What are you looking to do next? You spend a lot of time at the castle. I mean, I would also like to hear what you just did at FISM this year too.
Sure. Well, let's go start with FISM. So, yeah, I was lucky enough to go to FISM and present the one-person show, which was great. And it's just amazing to get to perform for magicians from all over the world, and get a nice response from, I sort of certainly felt validated and great after those performances. Mm-hmm. But for me now, I love having my live show, and I'm always kind of developing that. It's like I say, it's like a puzzle. Some pieces come in, some pieces go out. I try to, round it out so it's always got these, like I say, peaks and valleys, things like that. Trying to repeat too many effects. I think that's one thing that I see with longer shows, that like if you're putting together an act. John Carney gave me this advice years ago, and it's really stuck. Is like, you don't need more than one pick a card trick in your show. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You don't need more than 1,000,000-to-1 mentalism thing that's completely impossible. If you've got that, great. Maybe do a piece of spirit magic. Maybe try something completely different. Yeah. Piece of antique magic. I don't know. Something from Tarbell. Whatever. Because
it gets repetitive for the audience.
It can. If they're seeing the same effect over and over, yes, it gets terribly repetitive. And I'm all surprised when I see magicians that are doing a 20-minute set and they do 3 very similar effects. Like, what do you... Yeah. That's a 1 in 5 thing. Oh, you do another 1 in 5 thing, another 1 in 5 thing. So, I don't know. But I'm slightly derailing from your question. No, it's okay. I think now, just trying to... I say keep the one-person show in good running form, so I can do it in theaters and nightclubs on an as wanted basis, and working on a TV thing where I'm trying to take the character from the live theater, from that ephemeral space, and put him into the television or the mm-hmm. computer. I just call it the box right now because I don't know where it's going to end up, but. I collaborate with my wife and have since day one, and we're working on a TV show right now. So we're putting together a little pilot, and mm-hmm. it's either a 22-minute pilot or 3 webisodes. Okay. Because we don't know, but they're all kind of based on the character and mm-hmm. his world. So. Do
you enjoy pursuing things outside of magic like that?
Completely, yeah. Because one helps the other. Anytime if I'm writing a kind of a scene for like a TV thing, it's the same character, it's the same point of view. It's all everything. It's all attached. It mm-hmm. all it's all the pieces are coming from the same the same place, and it heightens it on other levels.
Mm-hmm. What do you think you'd be doing if there wasn't magic? If you went from music to anything else that would have sparked your fancy?
No idea. I don't think about that because it's depressing.
I'm the same way too. I don't know what the heck. I have no other skills.
I mean, when I got out of music, I was in the auction business for 5 or 6 years. It's this sort of a survival job. I got out of music. My wife and I bought our first house. And suddenly I was unemployed and didn't know what I was going to do. I was interested in magic, but I wasn't certainly making money at it, and certainly not enough to, pay any bills. So I don't know. Sometimes I think I at best might be sitting behind a desk at Christie's or Sotheby's and, writing auction catalogs and setting up auctions and maybe doing those.
Interesting.
I'm a freelance auctioneer. I still do that. When the phone rings, I still go out and call bids at auctions and stuff like that.
Huh.
So it's fun, and I mostly on a charity level now. It's what I'll go out and do charity events, and it's quite fun. And I enjoy. It's that same thing where you're a performer. You're on stage. You're the guy. Everyone's looking at it, and everyone's focusing their attention on him, and you're calling the bids and sort of ringing in that ta-da moment again and again.
Yeah. We always ask everybody this, but you don't have to answer if you don't want to. But I'm always curious as to people's kind of favorite gig experience and worst gig experience.
Oh, yeah. Let me think about that. Favorite gig? Well,
I mean, doing things like FISM and television stuff sounds pretty exciting.
FISM's totally great. I mean, I would say that was amazing to do that. This past week, I got to work in the Parlour at the Magic Castle with Eugene Berger.
Okay,
so
I've heard about that.
Like next level stuff. As to so many magicians, Eugene's a inspiration and kind of hero, and he's never disappointed me in any way. Got to know him personally. He's an amazing person, and he's been super, super generous and thoughtful and turned into a good friend. So doing a show with him is certainly a highlight. Anytime I can perform with any of my friends or share a stage at the Magic Castle with somebody that I respect and admire is that I'm elated. When I can watch Tina Leonard from the sidelines perform her act, or Handsome Jack, or Gary O'Brien, or any Derek Hughes, Derek Delgado.
Yeah.
Anytime I can collaborate with any of my friends, that's like I feel like I've just won the game of life. So that answers that for the good side. For the bad side, I have a terrible gig that I did it's only about 2-3 years ago, and it feels like it was yesterday, anytime I imagine it. But I was hired to perform for a group of pilots, airplane pilots, in an airplane hangar, with this caveat that after I performed, a fleet of strippers was going to come out and entertain the gentlemen, the pilots,
as you do,
as they had done for 10 years. Okay, this was how it's worked for 10 years. These guys have this big party in an airplane hangar in Van Nuys. After the jazz band plays, the strippers come out, and whatever follows happens. Well, this time they decided they were going to put a magician between the band and the strippers, and I felt like, I mean, hell's is a really bad. That may be too harsh, but I felt pretty close to just going, I'm quitting this. I'm never performing again. In that the acoustics were impossible. Nobody wanted to. I couldn't get one person to pay any attention to me.
Sure.
Guys throwing back drinks and just not caring. And many of my routines, I need 1 or 2 spectators on stage. I could not, for the life of me, get a person out of the chair. They just say no.
Yeah.
Think of a card. Nope. Would you? Nope. Okay, so my 45-minute set lasted around 7 or 8 minutes.
Wow.
And I prepared all this special material for the show and really kind of made it, it was a nice gig as far as, the compensation and everything. So I went to the lengths of making the show good or specific to that, to pilots and what I thought would be cool for them. And it was such a complete disaster. And then as I was packing up the 3 tricks that I did do, the strippers came out, and suddenly all the guys were, very happy. Yeah, so that goes down as a pretty bad one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yeah. Those it's amazing how those just. Yeah, I told one on last week's podcast how something very similar. I was just struggling, couldn't get anybody to want to pay attention or participate in a big corporate event, and it's wild how those, like, you can have so many good shows that people are coming up to you after going, wow, that was amazing, that was the greatest show ever, and then you have that one that just sticks with you, and it shouldn't, because clearly those are all terrible people who shouldn't be seeing a magic show in the first place.
Right. Yeah, bad setting, wrong crowd, timing, who God knows what. Those are the moments where you just go, what am I doing here? You know, what am I doing wrong?
I called up my mentor after one of them, and I'm like, all right, so I'm thinking about quitting. What do I do now?
And what was his advice?
It was very good. He goes, you know what? All right, just imagine what you would be doing if you didn't, you know, if you weren't performing all the time. What would you want to do next? And then you kind of go, oh, I don't know what that would be. You know, I guess I really enjoy this to the point where I'm okay going through these terrible situations.
Right. Or taking a hit every once in a while.
Yeah.
Going, you know, that's I mean, I had that in music. You know, you go on tour and you do 30 shows and 2 of them are just, you're just like, what am I doing? I want my, you know, I don't want to, this feels wrong.
Yeah.
The performing arts. What are you going to do?
What are you going to do? Life is tough.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? I get we touched on this a little bit at the beginning, but what are your thoughts about the current state of magic? Because there's so much magic on television. It feels like magic is kind of blending, is slowly becoming a little bit like music, in that there's so many different styles people can pick from. Even if I think most audiences still don't understand that there's different styles of magic. I feel like most people have an idea of a magician in their head immediately when you say magic.
Right.
But to me, that's a good thing that there's many options, but it's getting a little bit saturated in some ways.
Sure. You're right. I mean, everything you said, I would agree with entirely. I don't like most of the magic I see on television. There's a couple of shows that I have friends that perform, you know, that have worked on the show. Penn and Teller's Fool Us, I think is interesting.
I think it's a very good show.
I love what Michael Carbonaro's doing with Carbonaro Effect. And beyond that, I mostly just can't get to the remote fast enough to turn it.
Yeah.
To turn the channel, because I just feel like it's not being represented in a way that excites or interests me, and I don't feel that it's pushing the art forward, you know, at all. It's sort of it doesn't do anything for me. So I just tend to rather than get angry or upset with it, I just don't look at it and try to, you know, read a book or something. You know.
I will say Fool Us seemed to touch a lot of people, because when I was still working at Disney, it felt like every day somebody would come up and ask me, after almost every show, somebody was, have you seen that show Fool Us, you know, with the magicians? And that's pretty cool, because I feel like that's a show that's doing it well and isn't, you know, it's not edited too quickly, and they do a good job of adjudicating what's happening, even if they clearly hate it or really aren't into it. They don't really tear anybody down, which I think is good. No,
they don't, and they also let magicians sort of be themselves, and they don't. You're right. I mean, they edit. I've seen other magic shows where they're edited poorly. There's the sound cues magicians use are replaced with terrible, TV friendly music that is, you know, owned by, you know, the producers, so they don't have to pay music royalties, and they're presented in a with a backdrop that looks crappy or just not good. It's just there's so much of it that's not unappealing. That's unappealing. That P&T kind of have it nailed with that show, and again Carbonaro. And anytime Ricky Jay appears on a TV show, it's fun to see what he's doing. But you know.
Is there anything you would like to promote? Any shows? I know I saw something coming up in L.A.
Yeah, sure. On February 6th, I'm performing at the Steve Allen Theater here in L.A. It's my it's the one person show I've been talking about. You know, the one I've been doing all over the place. And I started working on it there like 2011. My wife and Derek Delgadio, Derek Hughes, John Levick, all, you know, everyone kind of pitched in thoughts and helped in one way or the other, and primarily with Tommy and I at the front of kind of, all right, let's see how this, you know, let's see if we can make this an interesting hour. And so I'm doing that. And this time it's just me. Usually I have a live piano player, but I'm just going to try sound cues for this run. And I guess that's really all I have to really promote at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Any parting advice as we're wrapping up here for professionals, non-professionals, people starting off, people who hate magic?
Well, I can't change anybody's mind. If you hate magic, I understand.
Yeah.
And if you made it this far and you hate magic, I don't know why you've been listening this whole time, because
not
you're
your
a
demographic.
loser, and you should be doing something else with your time. But I would say, God, work hard and do what you love, and be respectful. Give back to the art form. Anytime you get some advice, or you take a routine from something. Buy the book, buy the DVD, try to give back to the community in some way, whatever that is, whether it's a charity show or, mentoring somebody else, and stay true to who you are, and try to push magic forward as an art form by staying true.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That's great. Well, thank you so much for doing this. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Nice
and
talking
thanks,
with you.
Thanks for all your dogs, too. They've been staring at us.
I know, they haven't barked once. Zero barks.
Is...
So we got signing out from Gypsy, Chase, and Trixie from Valley Village.
All right, thanks, guys.
Cool.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Nick.